these exercises we're going to be working on today. Would you guys look at my little flow chart up there on your packet? Where you should have your packet out. No, your packet should already be out. What's the very first thing we should always do when it comes to factoring? This is the turn it on, yes, but read the flow chart, Noah.
Factor the GCF.
Yes, get the GCF factor before you think about anything. You guys remember how we got really good at the difference of squares yesterday?
Yes.
And before that, we did the 2x2 box factoring. We got pretty good at that. So before you think about a 2x2 box, before you think about the difference of squares, we're going to factor the GCF first every time. How stupid would it be if you called the IT help desk? You said, my computer's not working, and they said, well, have you checked this, have you checked that? And in the end, after a half hour, you realize it's not plugged in. The power's not on. Wouldn't it be smart for them to say, hey, is it plugged in? Is the power on? Because if you took care of that first, then you could move on to more difficult things. So the GCF is sort of like, we're plugging this in. We're making sure we got power. We're going to do the GCF before we do anything else first. Then we look at the leftovers and we decide, should it be a difference of squares? Should I do the 2x2 factoring? We make those decisions later. Does that make sense? Are you with me? Okay. So if you would, let's flip forward to our first example, which is right here. What's the new word in the instructions? Completely. We haven't seen that before because we really haven't had to say that before. But now with these, that's actually going to be a thing. So we are going to factor completely. So whenever you're factoring the very first, you're going to get bored of me saying this. I'm going to say it a lot because I don't want you to forget. When you're factoring, the very first thing you should do is,
Turn it on.
AKA for us, that'll be the, get the GCF. Yeah, turn the computer on, plug it in, whatever. That's factoring out the GCF. So, take a look at 27x cubed. Please don't not get this because you were distracted. 27x cubed minus 12x. Can anybody identify a common factor? 3 is in common. I agree. So I'm going to write that over to the side here. Does anybody see anything else that's in common? Don't they both have an x?
Yep.
Guys, you cannot, listen, I'm going to say this as plainly as I can. You are delusional if you think you can get this while you're distracted. Do you get it?
Mm-hmm.
You are delusional means you are out of your mind. You are completely out of your mind if you think you can halfway pay attention to this and get it. Okay? So I'd suggest you focus. Okay, so 3 is in common, x is in common. Do you see anything else that's in common? Good. I don't either. Let's think about what's left over for that first term. If it was 27 and I factored out a 3, what's left over inside? There's a 9 inside, right? Because 3 times 9 is 27. If I had x cubed before, but I factored out an x, what's left over?
4.
No, I took one of them out.
Oh,
X squared, right? If there was 3 of them and I took one of them out, there's only 2 of them left. So x squared minus, so 12, if I factored out a 3, the leftover, say it again? 4. Oh, you were talking about that one. I wasn't quite done with the first one. You were correct on the second one. There was an x, but didn't we factor it out?
Yes.
So that x is not there anymore. Okay, so step 1 is always, every single time, make sure the stinking computer is plugged in, AKA factor out the GCF. So the GCF has been factored out. Now what we do is we look at the leftovers. We look right in here, and we ask ourselves, could this be factored further? Could I break this down a little bit more? So if you look at your flow chart, after you factored out the GCF, you can flip back, or it's right there at the top of the page if you want. Binomial, trinomial, what do we have?
A binomial.
It's a binomial, it's 2 terms. So it says, if you have a binomial, think about the difference of squares. So is 9x squared minus 4 the difference of squares? Like what we did yesterday. Remember that pattern you guys got so good at it before you left? Like everyone had a perfect score basically on our second to last question. Is 9 a perfect square?
Yes.
Is x squared a perfect square?
Yes.
Is 4 a perfect square?
Yes.
And is it minus?
Yes.
Therefore, it's the difference of 2 squares, right? So, does anybody have any ideas
how that 9x squared minus 4 would factor? 3x minus 2 times? No, this would be 3x minus 2 times
3x plus.
plus. Remember, it's that minus plus pattern or plus minus pattern? Okay, then I don't want to forget that this 3x was there to begin with. And so what I'm putting inside this turquoise box is the complete factoring of 27x cubed minus 12x. I factored the GCF first, then we recognized that there was a difference of squares, and then you used your skills from yesterday to factor the difference of squares, and at this point I'm done. It's as factored as it could possibly be. I'm making a video of this just like I made a video of yesterday. If you ever feel lost, if you ever go home and you're like, man, have you ever been here? I've said this before, but I want you to rethink this. Have you ever been to this place where you leave class and you think, okay, I think I'm starting to get that. But then you start to work on your homework like 4 hours later or 24 hours later and you're like, oh man, yesterday I sort of knew this and now I don't remember it at all. Have you ever been there? What could you do?
Watch the video.
Watch the video. And you know what you would hear? At 6 minutes and 16 seconds, you would hear yourself saying, watch the video. Like, it's just like going back to class, right? Okay. So, any questions on what I did there with number 1? All right. So, let's look at number 2. So, number 2 uses some familiar language. It says factor completely. So, whenever we are factoring, how do we plug the computer in? What's our first step? Greatest common factor. So let's see if we can analyze this. Can anyone identify what the GC, well, like, let's just find at least a common factor. What do all 3 of those terms have? They all have an x. They all have a 2. I agree. So I would say 2x is definitely the greatest common factor. Let's figure out what's left over after I get that 2x out of there. How about the first term? Does anybody have a thought on what would be left over after I factor that out? Ella, what do you think?
X squared.
X squared is correct. I got the 2 out. I had 3 x's, but I took one of them out. How about the second term?
Minus 12x.
Minus 12x is correct. And then the last term used to be 54x. Now it's 27, right? Because 54 divided by 2 is 27. And we factored the x out. So here's how this works. Once you've gotten the GCF out of there, we've at least plugged the computer in, it's ready to go. But now we take that one step further and we look at the leftovers and we ask ourselves the question, is that 2 terms or 3 terms? 3 terms. So it's not the difference of squares. How do we try to factor a 3-term polynomial? And the box thing, right? Exactly right. So I'm going to take the expression in orange up there. Let's identify our A and our B and our C. So the expression in orange, the leftover. What is the A value? The A value is never x. It's always a number. What is it, Sebastian?
1.
It's a 1, right? So if the coefficient's not there, then we recognize that it's a 1. What do you guys think the B is?
12.
Not 12?
-12.
Negative 12. The sign in front of the number is part of the number. So negative 12. And the C value? 27.
27.
So we're going to take Noah's advice and we're going to find our A times C. So A times C, of course, would be 1 times 27, which is 27. We got to find our 2 special diagonal numbers. So I use a little x for that. In the bottom I put, the top I put 27. The bottom I put my B. And we got to figure out which 2 numbers multiply to be 27 and add to be negative 12.
3 times 9.
So 3 times 9 is 27, but 3 plus 9 is positive 12. So you are super close. Negative 3 and negative 9. So Bray, you were right on the cusp there of having that. If we just made them both negative, it would perfectly fit what we're trying to do. Does that make sense? Okay, so now I'm going to use my box. And in my box, I put first term here, last term here, And then what goes in the two diagonal spots? Say again?
Negative 3, negative 9.
But with x's, right?
X.
Yeah, so negative 3x,
Yeah, okay.
negative 9x. And then I'm going to factor. So if I factor like this, I factor this direction, what comes out?
9.
9 doesn't go into 3.
Negative 9. Negative.
Not negative 9, negative 3.
Negative 3.
3 is the common factor, but remember if you finish with a negative, like if the finishing box is negative, we factor out a negative. In this case, 3. How about factoring along the red arrow right here? What's in common? Yeah, you're right. It's just an x. What about factoring along this blue arrow?
Negative 3.
Not negative 3, negative 9 actually.
9.
Right, because 9 goes into 9 once, and 9 goes into 27 3 times. So this would be negative 9. And finally, the last one there, what is the common factor there?
X.
They both have an x. So guys, we're ready to write our complete factorization. Here it is. The 2x did not go anywhere. And this factors is x minus 3 times x minus 9. What I'm putting in this turquoise box is the complete factoring. Can you see how in many ways what we're doing here is we're trying to put it all together?
Yeah.
We're taking all the skills you've worked on for the last roughly week or so, maybe even a little bit more than that. We're trying to put it all together in one situation and try to decipher what we need to do and when we need to do it. So I'd love to hear if you have any questions so far. Okay, I think I've got one more here, and let me decide what I want to do with this one. Yeah, you know what? I think number 3 would be an excellent one for you all to try all by yourselves. Okay? So see if you can do number 3. Remember, when you're factoring completely, what's the very first thing you do? Factor out the GCF. No, it is correct. So please try to factor out the GCF before you do anything else, and then go from there. 17 times 10 goes into 25. GCF. GCF on you. We say 2 Sydney, it's a good start. GCF so far. What's this all about?
I was shown the questions, so I was just.
Did you do this by yourself?
I did that.
The 5x? So you're just trying to work to that answer?
Yes, I was.
That's fine. No, that's totally fine.
Alright, so.
So you got ahead of me a little bit? Good, or you're fast.
Ignore.
Okay, good GCF there. If you want to multiply to the top, yep, you got it. Except your bottom should be your P.
Oh, so just positive 5, right?
So then, yeah, the top of the X is AC, bottom is P. There's GCF there, Bree. You got a good GCF there, keep going, you're on the right track for sure.
Okay, wait, are you in the box?
So good.
You have a good GCF there, you're rolling.
Yeah.
The bottom's always the bottom B, right?
Oh, okay, I get it now. I get it.
You might get to some point someday where you don't even really need the X of the fancy box. I gotta admit, I don't think I ever used that, but I think when you're first learning it, it's very useful.
So you can just do it in your head.
Yeah. Since I've done so much multiplying and so much factoring, you can see the numbers. Usually, sometimes the numbers get big or difficult or something. I
So
might
you have
use
like a
that.
special talent, you can just see it in your head and stuff.
It's not a special talent, it's work. Like when I was your age, when I was in Algebra 1, I don't know if I was really any better than you are. Anybody, honestly. I just worked at it, and right? You keep working at something, you get better.
Whoa. It's so funny.
Okay, I'm going to try to catch up to you all. So here we go. I walked around and I saw that a lot of folks, I think just about everybody, had 5x as their GCF. Very encouraging because that's the right GCF. So wonderful job there. Leftovers are 2x squared plus 5x minus 12. So remember, after you factor in the GCF, because that's the very first thing you do every single time, you want to look at what's left over. I'm sure you all noticed that this is 3 terms right here. And if you have 3 terms, you're going to use the 2x2 box. So maybe I'll just go here for now. Let's see if we can come up with the right answer. Should be this, right? 2x minus 3, x plus 4. I'd be happy to explain where that came from. Compare your answer to mine. Are we in agreement? Are we in disagreement? Agree? Let me see if I can explain in a little more detail. I can see some looks on faces where I think this would be a really good idea. So let's see here. I'm going to actually move this out of the way. So here we go. Sydney, can you help me out? What's my A value? 2 is correct. Caroline, what's my B value? It's correct. Noah, what's my C? No. It's always a number. A, B, and C are always numbers. In this case, it's negative 12. Okay. So that means A times C is 2 times negative 12, which is negative 24. Then with my X, am I helping anybody right now? Okay, so the folks that are just distracted and talking, let's be nice to the folks that are getting something out of this, even if you aren't. Okay, so B goes in the bottom, bottom, right? And AC goes in the top. So you try to think about the numbers that multiply to be negative 24, and there are quite a few of them, right? 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6. There's a lot of them. Which ones end up working out here?
8 minus.
The 8s and the 8s and 3s, right? Yeah, so wouldn't it need to be positive 8 and negative 3? Because those will multiply to be negative 24, but they'd add to be positive 5. Okay, so once I found those, I'm going to build my box. And it looks like this right here. The first term always goes in the upper left, last term in the lower right. Special numbers in the diagonals. What should I actually write in the diagonals? There we go. 8x and negative 3x. That's right. Okay, and then we just do our GCF factoring along those boxes. So what's in common between 8x and negative 12? And positive 4, right? Because we finish with a positive box. So be 4. And then what's in common on this yellow arrow?
X.
Yep, it's just an X there. Can you see how that's coming along with what I had written up there earlier?
Yep.
X plus 4, all right? So then along this gray arrow, what's in common there?
3.
It's 3, and it has to be negative, doesn't it? Because I finished with a negative box. Yep. So negative 3. What's in common along that one that I didn't put an arrow on at all?
X and 2.
Yeah, 2 and an X. Okay, so maybe now we can take this back over and say my final factoring is 5x, which was there the whole time, times x plus 4 times 2x minus 3. That would be my complete factorization. What do y'all think? Question, good, yes? Will you please quickly grab a whiteboard? I'm going to have you do one more of these. See how it all goes.
You want to
whiteboard and a marker.
Do you want us to get one or go to the board?
Either one is fine by me, to be honest. You can either get a small whiteboard or you can go to the big one. It's fine.
Mr. Anderson, here's my,
Oh, okay, hang on just a second.
Also, can I retake, Classical Safety on Tuesday?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, guys, give that a shot. Factor completely 50x squared minus 18. 50x squared minus 18. Once you have it, either flip the board or just turn around and let me know that you're done. Remember, you always factor the GCF before you even think about anything else. Before you even try to plan your computer, it needs to be plugged in. Get that GCF out of there.
Complete as we go. I wonder if they try to binomial so that you figure out.
Once you factor out GCF, ask yourself, is it 2 terms or 3 terms? And if it's 2 terms, think about the difference of squares. If it's 3, you got to think about the 2 by 2. Once you think you have it, just let me know. Okay, we are looking really good. Yes. Excellent. Bree, Sophia, all you guys, good job. That's perfect, Doc. Well done.
know.
Well done. Hey, once you're done, return to your seats. I just wanted to see one of those. I'm gonna give you your test back real quick just for you to see how it all went. Sophia, here.
right?
Yeah. Should be 2 parentheses 5x minus 3, 5x plus 3. Should be your factorings.
No, you get it right.
Bree, here is yours.
I got it right.
Here is your test. Doc, here is your test. Ashton, here is your test. Shakespeare is yours. Ellen, here is your test. Ellie, here is your test. Ray, here is your test. Let's see here, who else do I have? I got Lisa, Sasha, Kate, here is your test. Cindy, here is your test.
Oh, that's fine. I got hour long, that's fine.
Noah, here is yours. So please take a few minutes and look these over.
I got all those wrong.
So
I got all these. And I got those. I would get that one. You would. I got a negative one.
Third time you so well.
That truck dog.
Not too late to figure that out. Keep at it.
you have $10.
Do that. It was definitely
where you-
I feel like this should be. I thought you got 3 on the
I will, I'll send
God.
you
I missed all these.
So did I on your turn. I did like the greater than or like left with that. I didn't do that. I missed
So I was actually just talking about, no, about this.
I got -1, but it was
I
positive.
said, hey, I am at most.
I got 96. I got 90.
No. But look how close I
What
was.
we're equal to is.
There was no one next to it.
And I would just agree with you about that. Just with really about-
Oh, it was literally just above it. I was so close.
Get the most of it.
I was so close.
And then later on, told you you couldn't get 100. You said, hey,
Watch it.
you told me that. That means you should be able to get it.
Thanks, Max.
So guys, hey, I'll get these from you on the way out. Thank you.
So I took it at lunch.
Bree, thank you.
I didn't have that much time, but I came in for the half. And then I finished it like 20 minutes ago.
Ellie, hurry up.
I'm at like 3 times.
Yeah, if you finish enough time, you're gonna be able to like save.
Thank you very much. Hey, thank you very much. Lydia, Worth, thank you very much. Sebastian, thank you for work. So, someday, you'll be caught up. So I'd like to hear from you, email-wise or whatever, just let me know. And like I told you before, like, it's okay to interrupt.
Okay, I didn't know,
Oh, was it?
like, I would interrupt.
Well, you would, but it's not a rude.
I never had to like walk into class before.
It was the first time for everything, and it's totally okay with me. I can't speak for everybody. Especially if we have some kind of rain.
No, Sunday.
There's the whole like review,
What?
assigned.
Yeah.
The deadline had it, so they like, why did it say, do the questions? Cause I just feel like an extension, we could still be late, but I just wanna actually.
Will you send me an email, because I've got to run to our staff meeting thing here this afternoon.
Yes.
I'll probably forget in the meantime, so send me an email, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Ron.
They're not.
Hey, Matt. You too, thank you. Okay, go. Good weekend. Enjoy. Yeah, I think so, that gray one. I just left it there. Yeah. All yours.
This is, I got this thing in October. I haven't lost it. Which is a record.
Yes, hold on to it. You should put a little carabiner through there and have something to clip it to your bag, just to.
It's got this nice little thing. It's got a-
Perfect.
just a-
Wow.
Perfect on your finger.
But
It'll survive.
if I leave it somewhere, or forget about it, then
If you
bad
can
things
see if
happen.
you can make it the whole year.
I'll try my best.